Hey, good morning, friends. Today is Monday, March the 10th, 2025, and the time now is 7:35 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk briefly about the United Kingdom, the UK, and I want to talk specifically about cutting UK aid or aid to the rest of the world. Now, friends, this is the first video for the United Kingdom in terms of geopolitics. If you're watching this channel, The Echoing Voice, or the videos on this channel for the first time, this is how The Echoing Voice is set up. Every country and every significant, prominent international institutions will have at least two playlists on this channel. For example, let's say a country. The country will have two playlists. One is going to be named the country's name. In this case, the United Kingdom. And the other is going to be named domestic, the country's name, or domestic United Kingdom. Now, the country's name playlist will feature videos, talks, ideas, or programs that specifically talk about the country's geopolitical position in the world, the country's relations with other countries in its region, and the country's relations with countries throughout the world. Now, friends, for the domestic, the country's name playlist, and in this case, we are talking about the United Kingdom. The playlist is going to feature videos, talks, programs, and ideas that specifically focus on the country or the United Kingdom's domestic situation, whether we are talking about unemployment, employment, job, infrastructure, education, and so on and so on and so on. Now, friends, I want to talk specifically about the United Kingdom cutting UK aid. So, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, prior to his trip to the United States, in which he met with Donald Trump in the Oval Office or in the White House, he announced that he is going to be cutting foreign aid. It is very interesting, friends, that first the United States under Donald Trump cut foreign aid, okay, or USAID, and following the United States is the United Kingdom. We have to be honest, friends. As much as the United States is an empire, and let's be honest, I do believe that the United States is an empire, or the West today acts as an empire, with the United States being the main ground of the empire. The United States being the core of the empire, and then countries such as the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and the rest of the West being the periphery. At least that's how it appears. Now, for the United Kingdom, it seems like the United Kingdom as of today, whether we are talking about the United Kingdom together with the British Commonwealth and the United Kingdom, in addition to its influence, its specific individual influence as a country, as a sovereign state, it's an empire by itself. In this case, the United Kingdom is an empire within an empire, a Western white world empire. Now, the United Kingdom is a country that actually seems to be bound by the hip with the United States. It seems anything the United States does, the United Kingdom does it as well. And I've said many times that what we are seeing is a cooperation, a coordination of the White West, the conservative slash the far right movement throughout the West. Keir Starmer came to power, and many were thinking that he was going to detach from the connection, okay, that people such as Boris Johnson and the others had with Joe Biden in terms of their efforts to defeat Russia in Ukraine. Now, friends, it seemed like Keir Starmer hasn't detached himself or is still connected. He does subscribe to the idealism, okay, or to the idea of the previous British prime ministers. Whether we are talking in this case about Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and the Indian guy, okay, who was the previous prime minister. I do not remember his name as of now. His name is just missing in my mind right now. But what we are seeing is an empire within an empire. Now, in terms of the aid itself, it is very interesting that both in the United States and now in the United Kingdom, these leaders are acting as if the current state of their country's economics or economies, domestic situation, is a result of either minority or them providing aid to the rest of the world, which is not the case. If you look at the aid that Western countries, in this case the United States and Britain, most especially give to the world, it is very insignificantly low. It does nothing to their national budget, but they are presenting it as if the rest of the world is just taking from them. But it is also interesting that their domestic politics, okay, or their domestic voters are all buying, okay, to the narrative. They are buying the narrative. Now, in terms of cutting aid, as an African, as a black man, I say yes, go ahead. That's what you want to do, cut the aid. Now, friends, as much as people around the world will die, or in this case in Africa, a lot of people, okay, have been needing those aid. If Western countries, and in this case the United Kingdom, following the United States, cut aid to the rest of the world, and in this case to Africa, yes, people are going to die, people are going to starve, people are going to get sick because people do depend on this aid. Okay, however, in the long term, it is going to backfire. It is going to hurt the United Kingdom because the aid that they provide doesn't come without string attached. It creates leverage for them within these countries, okay, or these countries. Leverage that, in the case of Africa, many Africans are saying we are tired of this. For example, the UK does have base in Kenya and in parts of the world in Africa. If you're not bribing African leaders with your aid or African countries with your aid, what necessitate you implanting your military bases within Kenya or within African countries or any country in the world? If you are not giving aid to these countries, what leverage should you have within these countries or within these governments? So as much as they are jubilant of the fact that they are cutting aid to Africa and the rest of the world and stating that it is going to help their national budget, it is going to hurt them. Now, in the case of Africa, what Africans should be asking now is Western companies that are doing businesses in Africa, whether we are talking about owning mines, okay, doing agricultural businesses, okay, extracting raw materials, natural resources, African countries and governments should begin now to demand that Western countries, companies in Africa, and in this case, we are talking about the UK companies in Africa, doing businesses in Africa, one, need to pay their full amount of taxes, and they need to pay the full amount of the raw materials or for the raw materials that they're extracting from these African countries or countries in the world. And African countries should also begin to enforce reality, enforce fairness. This means sell their raw materials, their natural resources at the fair international market price or market value. Basically, do not sell their resources, okay, for peanuts. And basically demand that every interaction between them and the West, whether we are talking about Western countries, institutions, or companies, corporations, must be fair and must also be diplomatic and not basically put themselves in a position that makes them vulnerable. If this is so, then once again, everything that we are seeing the United States and now the United Kingdom is doing is going to backfire. You don't give Africa and the rest of the world your aid? Well, you don't have to tell Africa and the rest of the world anything. Now, as I've said earlier, Western governments, and in this case UK government, are making the whole idea that their countries are now in a very strict, in a very compelling international or domestic or economic situation to be the result of them giving excess funds to the rest of the world. But it's very interesting that this cut is taking place, okay, in the UK in order to fund their hard power, to fund military, I won't say expansion, but to fund the rebuilding of the UK's military. So we're going to cut aid to the rest of the world, but we're going to beef up our military. Are we beefing up the military in this case for the UK to go and fight the Russians? Or are we preparing for World War III? What is the case here? This is very interesting, but let's assume that what Donald Trump did to cut aid to the rest of the world and Africa was a strategy to basically entice Europe to do the same. Then Trump is doing a heck of a job. Then he is very much being strategic and he is accomplishing a lot. At least as of now, as of the immediacy of it. But in the long term, when these countries are being starved of funds, we could begin to see protests and possibly revolutions in these countries. And Africa is one such place that is ripe. It is overdue for revolution. And I'm talking, in this case, for mass revolution that will basically topple government. Because no government in Africa right now, perhaps with the exception of the Sahel states, can boast that their people love them. A government or a leader such as Paul Kagame, yes, he does have leverage because of what he has done in Rwanda. However, for the entire Africa, the most significant part of Africa, all these leaders cannot boast, cannot argue that their people want them to remain in power tomorrow. At least, once again, with the exception of the Sahel states that are currently in the states of revolution where they've kicked out colonially backed, okay, puppets in these countries. Now, friends, I really want to know what you think, so please tell me what you think. But once again, in terms of the aid that are being earmarked, the full amounts, I do believe, do not go to these countries because there are lots of corruption being done. And the corruption, okay, Western leaders and countries usually blame it on Africa. But the corruption does start in these Western countries. When these funds are earmarked, okay, or put within the budget, they go through a lot of stages where a lot of cuts are being made, or in this case, any body, any prominent member of society can write a grant for some project in Africa or some project in Asia or Latin America or the Caribbean. And the funds is allocated. By the time the funds go through all of the various stages of the purchases and changes and so on, the funds has been significantly reduced to the point where the African country is getting peanuts. In this case, let's say Sierra Leone, let's say there is a grant, okay, a fund, an aid of $50 million, okay, or 50 million British pounds being earmarked for Sierra Leone as a result of some prominent member of the financial and economic system writing a grant for Sierra Leone. By the time their funds go through all of the stages and all of the institutions that are tied to that aid getting their cut, and this person getting their cut, and that politician voted for the funds to be allocated is bribed through election and so on. By the time the funds actually make it to Sierra Leone, the fund has been reduced significantly to the point where out of the $50 million or the 50 million pounds, maybe Sierra Leone might only get 5 million pounds or $5 million or 10 million pounds or $10 million. So this is the reality as well that is in place in terms of the aid that Africa is receiving from the West. But once again, it is very interesting that the United Kingdom is going to be cutting foreign aid in order to beef up its military. Perhaps it is to beef up its military for the sake of preparing for World War III or to continue the current policy of the West. As much as Donald Trump is basically stepping back, the policy to defeat Russia, and if not to destroy Russia, is a Western policy. It is a Western, not just strategy, but also a Western tactic as well. Now, friends, Please tell me once again what you think, and I really want to know what you think. But friends, I am going to end here. I want to thank you a lot for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, my friends. But most especially and most importantly, friends, or most important, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace.